Hey, 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 happy Saturday. And this is part two of our Lunch and Live series. I know it's the weekend and you're probably not working, but I promised myself I was going to continue this series every day during lunchtime so that I can get this word out. I actually wrote this word out 2 years ago in June of 2023, and I was supposed to carry this out 2 years ago. And as I looked over my Google account and was kind of clearing up some things, I looked at the date and I said, you know what? I was not obedient. I need to get this out. I'm Chandra, by the way, and I am, I'm just a caregiver. I'm a parent. I'm a realtor, mortgage loan officer. I wear many, many, many hats. But I also am a child of God, and the relationship that I have with God has just transformed my life. And so I was given this information or this message or this information about 2 years ago, and I want to share with you. And today we're going to cover part two of what I'd like to call He's Not Afraid of My Ugly. We're talking about shame. And yesterday I kind of went over the introduction, talked about, how society views ugly, that word ugly. I talked about it, mostly being attributed to our outer appearance. But there's also ugly things that we carry around on the inside that we've repressed. And so I'm going to be looking at my phone and looking at my screen. So if you see my eyes kind of wander here and there, that's what I'm doing. I'm not going to be on here long. I was told by my son that I need to hurry up so he can get to his swim party. Isn't that something? But here, let's get started. Again, I talked about um, just an introduction of what ugly is, what it means, like what society says we need to do with things that are labeled as ugly. But I also want to talk about the definitions, which is what I left off with on yesterday. And there was something I said yesterday that just has been um, brewing on the inside of me when we talked about the definitions. And just remember, to be to have shame. We talked about the definition of shame. Is described as a painful feeling of humiliation or distress. Okay, it's caused by consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. It can be a noun, a person by or action or situation that makes someone feel ashamed, or it can be a verb. To be naked is to be exposed. It's subject to the effects of something or unprotected. And that word unprotected really has been sticking out to me so much since yesterday, because many of us are unprotected or have felt unprotected. And the Hebrew describes the feeling of shame as equal to a continuum with death. Imagine that, to feel shame is equated or equal to the feelings of death. And we'll never really know, some of us may have experienced, death, but brought back to life. But the feeling of so much pain that it's indescribable, right? A death that leads to the degradation of the body or how a body decomposes after burial. That's how the Hebrew describes shame. So imagine that. It's an internal feeling of being grossly and unbearably flawed, belief that we are inadequate, we're bad, we're no good. It results in low self-esteem and poor self-image. So I'm going to cover like the symptoms of shame on another day, but I really want to talk about the feelings of, shame being equated to being unprotected. The persons that were uh, given the responsibility of protecting us, the first group of people that were given that responsibility were our parents. Okay, they had the responsibility of covering us as their children. And some of the shame that many of us have experienced or are feeling even today has come from that first failed protective system that was supposed to be our parents, right? They were supposed to protect us from situations. And, a lot of times nowadays we kind of, not we as in myself, but just in general, we talk about the overprotective parent, right? Is there really such a thing? Because honestly, like, isn't our job as parents to protect our children up until a certain point? I haven't talked about meeting a young lady who has a center out in Dearborn, where she has, she had a background in education, and she removed herself because she didn't feel she could adequately provide what the children needed. But she talked about how up until the age of 7, children are like sponges. They are in a state of, she described it, of consciousness that allows them to receive all kinds of downloads. And so, as parents, it is our job to make sure that the downloads that our children are receiving are good, healthy downloads. But many of us, maybe we didn't receive good, healthy downloads. And so we passed down unprotection to our children and allowed them to be exposed to the elements, be it abuse, be it molestation, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse. I can't describe, and if you've never been in this situation, you really don't know what it feels like to not have the protection of your parents. And so those were the first set of people that were put in our life, whose life we were put into to provide that protection, right? And then as we mature, as we build that relationship with God, their role was to teach us how to have a relationship with God, so that the role of protection, even though God is still there, He's protecting us, the role of protection becomes more of God's responsibility as we grow older. Okay. That, He is the ultimate protector, He's the ultimate covering. We like to use that word covering. Our parents were our first covering, with God giving them direction. And then, as husbands and wives, they say that the husband is the covering or protector of the wife, right? And the God, Jesus, is the covering in the head of the husband. So are the roles of protection kind of move and matriculate as we grow older. And I'm not going to get into, the whole covering thing, but, when you go by scripture and you really look at that thing, God placed us in hands of people that were supposed to be designed and so in tune with Him that they know how to cover us and protect us, from the elements, right? These are true coverings. And your boyfriend, they're not your covering. I'm sorry, I hate to say it, they're not your covering. And that's why you feel so vulnerable when you give yourself to them. Like, you feel shame. You're not going to say it, and you don't have to say it here, but when you're not in a protected environment and you're giving yourself away, you have a feeling of vulnerability that you cannot even describe. And the world tries to drink it away, smoke it away, sleep it away. But there's a design, there's an order that God set on earth for us to operate in. And these are our true coverings. They're supposed to be, at least when we have that right relationship with God. So when we talk about the definition of shame, and it being something, the effects of of something, or effects of being unprotected, that feeling, that humiliation that you carry around with you. And that's why you try so hard to protect yourself, like you're hardened. And even our men, they're hardened. They're over masculinity, because they're hardened. They have to protect themselves. They don't have the covering of a heavenly father, and they didn't have the covering of healthy parents, and so now they're feeling that unprotected, and that humiliation and distress of a consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. And remember, like, one of the things that society tries to teach us is that anything that's ugly, or that carries a scar, it should be covered, it should be repressed. And so we walk around empty, and having the feelings of shame on the inside, but we try to cover it, and we try to hide it. But like I said yesterday, you look in people's eyes, and it's just an empty stare. Sometimes it's like an empty shell, like no one's there, but they've put up so many walls, that they hardly, you look at, I'm telling you, ask God to show you, look in people's eyes, and you look and you don't see peace, you don't see love, you don't see it. People may say it, but the eyes always give it away. And so I'm going to end with that, because I hear footsteps. You know, my son, he's gonna control my day. Today is Saturday. I hope you guys have an amazing day. This is just a quick recap. And again, this is part 2 of He's not afraid of my ugly. God's not afraid of those ugly things on the inside of you. And so we're going to talk about shame. We're going to cover that. I'm going to come back. We're going to talk about some of the symptoms as well, and go over some scriptures. I gave Psalm 69:7 that said, "For I endure insults for your sake. Humiliation is written all over my face." And we know that the Old Testament, alluded to a Christ that was coming, that was able to bear our reproach. Right? He was able to bear our shame. And so he really, God, giving us this, his son, and Jesus was able to, the one that comes and takes away that shame. And if you think about it, nobody else can carry it for you, right? But he's here to carry that shame, and that humiliation that you feel on the inside, that you may not even share with anyone else. But I'm telling you today that you can share it with Jesus, because he's strong enough to carry it for you. And I want you to seek him as your ultimate covering. I'm telling you, seek him as your ultimate covering, and you're going to see great outcomes. Chandra Lake, I'm going to sign off now. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to come back, and we're going to talk more about shame, and more about God, not being afraid of the ugly parts of your life. God bless you. I hope you have an amazing Sunday. Oh, I'm sorry, Saturday, but have a great day tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right.